That's quicklane.com/valleyfordtruck.
The Sports Fix is on iHeartRadio. Download the free iHeart app today. Subscribe to the show and get your fix.
You love Cleveland, and you already know how much we love Cleveland. You know who else loves Cleveland? GV Art and Design. Everyday fans, you and I wear our pride on our sleeves. Now, you can wear your pride on your chest. GV Art and Design has one of the hottest Cleveland sporting lines. Log on right now to gvartwork.com. Check out all of their fantastic designs. And don't forget, use the sales code FIX10, FIX10, to save 10% on your total purchase. Follow gvartwork.com on Facebook, and remember, GV Art and Design, it's not just a shirt, it's a statement.
You're listening to the Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix Live here on the Sports Fix Radio Network. J-Rock back with you, rolling on, going to the phones in just a moment. Jonathan Knight, the sports writer extraordinaire, going to join us, getting ready to talk about, look, I know, trust me, we all know, and I'm sure it's going to get brought up here, the recent history between the teams, and is it a rivalry, is it not? Call it what you want. 121 meetings and counting. It is the oldest and most storied rivalry in the AFC, surpassing any other rivalry in the conference. And the latest chapter comes this week with, I'll tell you what, how about this for just a little twist on the story? Even with the Browns dropping week 1 to the Steelers, and even with the Steelers coming in with a better record than the Browns, Vegas has installed the Browns as the favorites in this game. And, I mean, hey, they had the Titans as the favorites by a point last week. So, I mean, it is what it is. A lot of that is the mechanism of being the home team and how that works. But they've got the Brownies favored by 2 points, according to Bovada this morning, against the Steelers. That's amazing. But that's them looking at the home aspect and the two teams as they come into this game. And we'll talk about it here in a moment, but you know what's funny about this rivalry is I would love to see a stretch for a couple of years where both teams are good in it, because as you know, traditionally, when the Browns are good, the Steelers are bad. I mean, in the course of the rivalry, when the Steelers have been up, then the Browns have been down, and that's kind of always been the way it would go. You know, it would be I'll tell you, because this division could be lining up with Cincinnati and Baltimore, always able to stay strong. I mean, it is one of the strongest divisions, period. We know that, but where literally you've got 4 teams who year in and year out could win this thing, man. That's not many divisions could say that. So you almost don't want, I mean, as a Browns fan, I'd love Steelers to drop off the cliff, but you almost don't want them to become the terrible version of the Steelers, you know. But hey, I'll take that over the alternative. If it's us or them, it's going to be them. All right, guys, Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at thesportsfixcle. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. I'm going to the phones. That's why you can't call, because Jonathan Knight's there, my man, the sports writer extraordinaire. JK, how you doing, my man?
Jerry, I'm doing well. I'm excited with your enthusiasm over what's coming up on Sunday. I think that is contagious, and I think that's a very good thing. So, well done, spot on.
What's not to be enthusiastic? I mean, really, this is, you know what, a couple of people this week have all said it in very similar but a little bit different wordage, that regardless of where they finish, wins and losses and what you think, even the staunchest, I mean, I had Bruce, it can be as anti-Browns as possible over there in the chat room, who called in yesterday and said, even I have to say, it's a different team. It's just not the same kind of team that they have put out there. Not even referring to talent, just the mentality, the way they play the game, the cleanliness of the game, all of that stuff. It's not what we have grown used to post-1999 out of Cleveland Browns football.
That's a great point, and I think it's very true. And I think that it is easy, I think, especially in the post-mortem and the days following the great comeback with Tennessee, I think that we sort of had a bell curve of emotion. I think we were down, obviously, when the Browns were down, and then a huge, huge high when they come back and win, and that lasted a day or two. And then I think we started to dip and slide more so than we would after a normal victory, when you started to really digest just how bad they were in the first half and how they dug that huge hole as you started to really kind of wrap your arms around the reality of a big comeback. The reality of a big comeback is that's great and it's emotional and wonderful, but you still got behind. You were still completely dominated for a good portion of the game. So now I think as the next game is in a big game, as you said, coming up, I think that we're starting to spike back up and get a little more enthusiastic. So it's been an up and down week emotionally, but you're right. There is a different feel about this team. I think just in the first 4 games, long way to go, 3/4 of the season to go. But I think we've seen more. I know I have seen more out of this team in these 4 games than I expected to see all season, honestly. I mean, not just in terms of victories, because I at the beginning of the year, I predicted 3 wins, and they're 1 win away from matching that. So even in that sense, I think just more than that, I think they provided more interest. We're seeing more promise and optimism than I ever expected to see, and that's great, and that's absolutely warrants optimism heading into this weekend.
And speaking of optimism, of course, the other day, I was on the air. I popped so big, I read it on the air. You sent me that tweet about Brian Hoyer being born on the day that Bernie Kosar started his first game for the Cleveland Browns. One of those talk about destiny kind of things, man. And we were talking on the air, and that came in. I said, well, there you go. For those of you guys looking for that kind of stuff, there it is right there. Because really, and the national media has really sucked on this week to the Brian Hoyer story, deservedly so too, but really starting to give him some attention. Because I laugh, man. I'll tell you what, if you know who had orchestrated that comeback the other day, they would have made a 2-hour special about it on SportsCenter the next day. So I was like, man, let's see how they handle this. And a lot of stories have kind of brushed over the Hoyer aspect, but I've noticed as it gains more steam that a lot of the national people are like, hey, there's a story going on in Cleveland. Let's talk about what's really happening.
Yeah, thank goodness. It's fine. It's so good to have a genuinely good story about the Browns. I mean, it really, for as much attention as was heaped upon them and followed Johnny Manziel as he came into camp, that was really kind of hollow, really, all of that attention. It was not anything that the Browns did. It was not really a good story. That would have gone anywhere that he went, would have been a circus. It really had nothing to do with the Browns. It just happened to be they were the stage that this was taking place on. This is a different thing. This is a genuine good story, and we haven't had one of those with the Browns. Certainly we saw that with LeBron coming back this summer. Cleveland itself had a real nice story. The Indians had a nice story last year at the end. It was very quick and happened very fast, but a nice story nonetheless. It's been quite a while since we've seen a really kind of cool story that the national media can get behind. So this is really nice to see, and thank goodness you nailed it on the head, deservedly so for Brian Hoyer. Boy, is this kid, he's had his share of bad breaks. He has been patient. He has really kind of worked his way to this point, and it is so great to see him getting the attention that he deserves.
Yeah, and that's another thing I'm interested in. It's with the whole team, but him as well, this is your first common opponent, your second time around, as you would say, And one thing that I noticed that I was bringing up, Kendall Lewis and I were talking a little bit about this yesterday, is it's undeniable. At first, I thought it was a function of falling down in the first half and then the way the teams play you in the second half. But it's undeniable to me that Brian Hoyer gets better as the game goes on, and he gets more effective as he sees more of the other team. That's a trait that only certain quarterbacks have, that intelligence of being able to literally adapt as you go and go, wait a minute, okay, I can, because literally from first to second quarter, second to third, third to fourth, his stats, everything shows an upwards trend as it goes, which somebody, I want to say maybe it was, I don't know, Bud Shaw, somebody in the PD said, it makes a lot of sense when you look back at the preseason, the fact of not being able to get that offense into a rhythm because you're going a couple of series and out, and clearly they get better as the game goes on. But that's something I'm interested to see now, how Shanahan, the whole team now prepare for a same team now, second time so early in the season, and see how different or not so different they are from week one.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why this is such a big game, to see what's different this time. Do the Browns make those adjustments that prevent them from falling behind as much as they did to Pittsburgh the first time round? And seeing if those adjustments that we have seen them make over the course of the game, offensively at least, can pay off, and we see it wholesale over the course of an entire game when they're playing an opponent for the second time. It really is, again, and this point I think has been hammered home, but important to revisit it anyway. That there are such similarities, and a lot of comparisons are being made to, as I did the other day, Brian Hoyer to Bernie Kosar because of the hometown connection, and there's some synergy there comparing the two. But really, this is Brian Sipe, right?
Yep.
I mean, this is really paralleling the Brian Sipe story in so many ways, and not just that in Hoyer on a personal level, but when you look at specifically the 1980 team, the Cardiac Kids, the prime of the Cardiac Kids run there, you really can see some similarities between this team and that. I don't think there's anywhere near as much talent on this team as there was on the 1980 team. You know, there were a handful of Hall of Fame players on that team. Yeah. But with these first four games, particularly with those three comebacks, really, what you're seeing is really Cardiac Kids type of football. This is a team that the 80 team, as we know, was built on offense and had a fantastic offense with a hot quarterback and some great receivers, the best offensive line this franchise has probably ever had, yep. And a 1,000-yard running back in the backfield. But even more than that, the way that they won and the flavor and tempo of their games was very similar to this. The Browns would not necessarily fall behind by huge deficits like they did against Pittsburgh and Tennessee, but they would start out flat. They would start out slow, and even when they were winning, they weren't terribly sharp, and it would come down to, okay, yeah, then they get kind of hot late in the game, and that's when it's when it's up for grabs, and they pull it out. So we're seeing that a little bit. We're seeing that personality, even if it doesn't match up piece for piece. You are getting that flavor that if you watched a game from 1980 and watched a game from 2014, they would play out almost the same way.
Yeah, Kendall Lewis brought up yesterday. He said he goes, even defensively in a bad way, you can make some comparisons, because as much as the offense will love to bring you back into a game, this defense will love to give that offense a chance to have to come back, because they'll just as quickly come out there. They'll make their plays from time to time. You know, they'll make a big play. They'll win a game or two, but that's one of the reasons why you have to be able to come back
that's
time and
that's
time
sort of
again. Sort of the dark underbelly of the Cardiac Kids that we don't really remember was that, yes, this offense was great and they scored late and they could light up somebody in the fourth quarter. Yeah, the reason they had to do that was the same reason that the team's down 28-3 at halftime last week, is because this defense is just really not good. And the same thing in 1980, the defense, I think that defense was better than this one. I think there's some nice pieces on that defense. That was Marty Schottenheimer's first year as a defensive coordinator, actually. In the NFL. So it was just sort of the beginning. There were a lot of guys sort of at the tail end of their careers, but that defense was not good. And we felt a lot the same way about that defense as this one. It was just like, oh my God, this offense is going to have to score 40 points if they're going to win, because they're not able to stop anybody. So yeah, that's sort of the opposite side of this coin. And that's what's scary. And that's why I know I am really wary going into this week, not because I don't think they can win. Of course they can. They've proven that not only in week one, but over the last few weeks. Sure, they can win. But, the defense is such a liability that it's difficult to imagine the Browns being able to, when the game's on the line, the defense being able to stand up and stop an offense and one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. That's a hard thing to envision. So maybe that's a strategy for the Browns. Yeah, let's go ahead and fall behind just like we did last time, lull them to sleep, and then just like in a race, tortoise in the hare, and then just sprint past them at the end when they're not looking. That may be a good strategy, because man for man, it's going to be hard to imagine the Browns defense being able to control Pittsburgh's offense for 4 quarters. The old Ollie rope-a-dope, just put
it's
the hands
exactly what it
down.
is. It really is kind of a rope-a-dope strategy, and it's worked a couple of times. So yeah, that may not be altogether off the mark.
I'll tell you what, I was talking to some people, and I was this week, and I was looking, and I said, think back even to the 80s when the Browns started to really get on that run towards the mid to late 80s and stuff. Even when they were winning and they were going to playoffs and stuff, it took a minute to snap the whole Pittsburgh thing again. And then they would roll in Pittsburgh again. And it's when there's a team that's got your number, even when you start to turn the corner, they may be. I always joke that line from Major League, well, we'll get them next time. One of these days, we'll get those guys. But there's always that team that it takes longer to break through against them than it does to just kind of turn the corner as a franchise. Like you may get to in a 10, 11 win season, but 2 of those losses